So, for the first time in the 8 years or 9 years of amateur running I've been doing, I've had my first ever running assessment. And what that really is just going to a physical training facility where there's running specialists, doctors, gait specialists who will look at your running form, your general anatomy, and be able to tell you things about running that you may have known before or things you never really thought about. So this time around, I flew out to Austin, Texas with the lady, and we ended up going to the Austin Run Labs, which I've seen dozens of videos for in different variations, and realistically, I just want to give the place a shot. So I'm going to talk about what happened at the Austin Run Labs, what I learned, things that blew my mind, things I kind of already had a hunch about, things I might disagree with at this time, and yeah, just whether you should go to Austin Run Labs. So before we get into it, just make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're already subscribed, watching content. Thanks so much, love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Strava for all sorts of other updates and things like that. So yeah, without further ado, I guess the last disclaimer is, I'm not sponsored by Austin Run Labs. They didn't really ask me to make this video. I asked them if we can record, and the doctor just said,
"No problems with filming any of the things. Just give my good side all the time."
We basically just recorded the entire session, and I'm not really going to post the whole session here, unless you guys want to see that. Now, if you do, I'll come up with a way to put up the whole thing so, you can just kind of sit and watch it at your leisure. Maybe I'll put it, behind a membership paywall or something. I don't know. I'll figure it out because I just don't want that to be necessarily public immediately. I'll think about it though. But anyways, we'll show some clips here and there and important things that I learned while I was over there. So why did I go? Well, first and foremost, you do running for 8+ years. You just kind of want to know what's working, what's not. Are there things we can do to make us more efficient? Are there biological or anatomical things going on in the body that I'm not aware of, that I should be aware of, that can help fix things or remediate certain issues? Those are a lot of the questions I was kind of asking. And of course, with having my weird rut that I had in the second half of 2023, I want to see if there's things I can do to improve the overall, structure of my running, right? So we get to Austin Run Labs. I already had a pre-approved and pre-scheduled appointment for the Monday of whenever I went. And basically just asked some questions, what's my sleep like, how many miles a week am I running, things like that. Just kind of laying the land of what my running fitness sort of looks like right now. And the main things I noticed is that my sleep wasn't too great at the time of 2023. Now it's getting better, right? But I was sleeping maybe 4 or 5 hours a night, constantly sore, constantly injured for various things, sick a lot, and then just basically clearing up some of those things, not having the morale to do long runs. And the main thing that is just free, the knowledge that's free 50 is just run with a friend during your long runs, no matter what the pace or whatever. Just have that morale boost while you're going, because it is really difficult to go on those kind of long runs by yourself. And I know when I lived in the city of Chicago, it was much easier because the lakefront path with a set of headphones is just a really good time. And that's just what I would do on a weekend. Just in the middle of the day, running along the lake. Couldn't ask for a better, situation during that day or during that, time of my life. So it's just different now living in the suburbs, way west of Illinois, right? So anyways, we get into the cool stuff. Again, a lot of the assessments are just based on anything anatomical. So how, do my knees bend? Do my feet bend a certain way? Do my knees bend a particular direction, right? And some of the things we learned is that I have a pretty wide range of motion when it comes to how my knees bend. So what you're looking for is about a 30 to 40 degree bend of when your knee is straight and how your feet bend. I have about 50 degrees on my right leg, which is cool, whatever, but then in my left leg, the motion is kind of a little bit less. And what is also noticeable that I that was assessed for me.
And then righty is straight on. So if you look at your knee and your foot, you're straight on.
Okay.
and then lefty, you got a little bit of a bow to your tibia,
Yeah.
and then your foot is a little to the inside.
Okay.
Just ever so slightly, right? Like nothing big. You're just a little to the inside. Again, going with the anteverted. You are both anteverted so that your knees are going to come in a little, and then your foot is also just a little bit to the inside, but you got a pretty solid arch. So your feet are pretty normal. So you're looking at stuff that's like 4 millimeter drop.
4 millimeter. Okay.
Okay. Other than that, you can wear whatever you want. You're not really special. But I'm kind of surprised that you like the higher drop shoe, because the Adidas that you're describing, I think, is like 8 or 10.
It's like 6.5, 7. Yeah.
That's one of the mind-blowing pieces I heard when I was over at the clinic, right? I'll actually play the clip here because I think it's important to stress that, like, as a runner, right, as somebody who studied this for like 8 to 10 years, has run so many marathons, I know maybe like 30 to 40% of the overall running space, right? And 30 is like actually being generous. I know maybe like 20. So when I'm listening to like a professional who is maybe like in the physical therapy space or the physio space who knows 60, 70, 80% of the knowledge, start mentioning these types of things, like it blows your mind, right? And I like to think of it also this way, like the first 50% of acquiring knowledge is super easy, and then the second half of that 50%, like if any human could ever acquire that amount of running knowledge, running fitness, experience, they would be able to run a sub 2-hour marathon in a normal condition, right? That's kind of like how I look at it, just weirdly speaking, right? So when you pick up running, you probably know like 20, 30% and etc. I'm just trying to say, it's like as you get closer to 100% knowledge space, acquiring that knowledge becomes more difficult, is like my thought process and theory with running and all sorts of other things, right? Like everybody can learn about 30 to 40% of everything, but is a master of none. Whereas like if you focus your entire life on learning like 80% of one thing and become the master at that thing, the amount of time, work, and dedication you'll need to acquire 85 or 90% could be decades, right? So you see where I'm going with this, right? This is just like, it's a cold to take, but this is just my way of kind of paraphrasing it. So the point there is like I'm listening to, people who have studied running for years. Those guys who know like 70 to 80% of the running skills needed to run a sub 3 marathon or a 2:30 or 2:15 or an ultra marathon, and they break these things down for you. It's super important, I think, to have that assessment and have that realization when it comes to like the anatomy of yourself as a runner, right? So the biggest takeaways here, I'll play the clip here if I have it. The biggest takeaways that I've thought about also is that based on the fact that I'm also anteverted, which means my knees kind of cave in a little bit, is that because of the anteversion and having strong arches, I should be in a shoe with about a 4 millimeter offset for running, racing, training, those kinds of things, which is kind of in conflict with everything I've kind of worked with up to this point, mostly because, well, it's kind of in conflict and it's kind of not. This is where things sway in different places, right? And kind of race through my mind when I look back at the assessment overall, right? The assessment there is that I've run in like the Vaporfly Next Percent 2, for example, which has an 8 millimeter offset. That's like twice the offset of what is being recommended to me. Does that mean running in the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 is bad? Not necessarily, but again, I'll play this clip for sure that kind of breaks down why this is sort of important, and this was one of those mind-blowing things that occurred.
Specs. All right, look. So then this is important for you. You can talk about this next time you do your channel stuff.
Yeah.
If your feet go to the outside, okay, be it from the hip or from the tibia, if you're like this, a higher drop is going to allow your big toe to go more in line.
Okay.
If you're internally rotated, if you're flatter, a flatter shoes allow you to then pronate further to make you line up more. So people who have internal tibial torsion or femoral anteversion wear flatter shoes. Me and you are similar. I am both anteverted, and then on my left foot, my foot goes to the inside.
Okay.
So I run in ultras and I run in the Asics Metaspeed Sky.
Metaspeed Sky. Okay.
which
got
is
it.
a 4 mil, or I run the Hoka Carbon Rocket X, which is a 4 or 5. Right? Both of those allow my foot to flatten so that my knee and my toe go the same direction. You put me in the Boston, for the Adidas Boston,
Yeah.
or like something like the Nike Pegasus, then I get pressure all through here and I break my 5th met or 4th met. Because it puts me here as I run, so either I rotate my foot to the inside or my knee kicks to the outside. And that causes stress on the outside of my foot because of how I particularly run.
Interesting.
Because it puts me in a position like this where it makes me have a higher heel, and then it makes me run on the outside of my foot, or my knee kind of rotates to the outside. So for you, you're going to want to be in that 4-ish range. You can go to 0, it's fine, because you have a little bit of space to give from your foot. So how much you can flatten your foot also dictates whether or not the torsion matters a lot. And your foot's fairly normal, so you have some play. So you don't have to be 0. But my bet is that you're not going to like the shoes with a super high heel.
So basically in that clip, just to break it down once again, it's the idea that something I haven't thought about when also doing shoe reviews in particular. It's that the offset of the shoe and the overall structure isn't just like 1 degree, right? So I've always thought about like that the offset is like, okay, we got a high heel, that means you're going to have just this higher effect. It's more than that, right? It's no longer just like, if we look at it from this direction, like the offset doesn't mean just this piece is going up and down. It also means this piece might be going up and these are going outward, right? So in a way, this explains way more to me as a runner than I think I would have ever thought about just until this point, right? And that's just something, again, in shoe reviews I may have to start like reflecting on more and more, is like, why are the outside of my shoes taking such a beating, right? Is it my natural anatomy? It could be. Is it my shoe choice with my natural anatomy? Yes. Can this be avoided? Maybe, but also probably not. Because the idea is what you saw in that clip is that if I have a more neutral foot than with strong arches, then I should be able to put all of my force on my big toe while running, right? So all of my force should be here in a natural to 4 millimeter shoe. But because I start going into like a 6, 8, 10 millimeter range, what's happening is my foot is also going outward. And because I already have a strong arch, what's happening now is I'm over supinating intentionally because I'm picking the wrong shoe while running. This is just a running theory. I can't prove any of this right now, other than the fact that if you see where my beat zones on my shoe are, it's in this upper area, which I don't think should be the case, right? So again, there will be a part 2 to this assessment because I don't have... There's one doctor that assesses, and now I'm going to get a gait analysis in the coming days, right? And from there, I'll also record that session, and I'll talk about it, and we'll kind of break things down. But my guess is that's explaining why the exterior side of my shoes are breaking as much. It's not entirely just my biology, it's also my shoe choices. And the only way to really prove this is to introduce a new race shoe in my lineup. Mostly because the Adios Pro 3, as much as I love the shoe and the turnover that the shoe has, I think it's like 6.5 to 7.5 millimeters, so it might be too much of that supination high heel kind of force based on what I heard. I'm going to start introducing 2 shoes as as Dr. Halas recommends here, which is one, the Asics Metaspeed Sky. In this case, it would be the Sky Plus. I think that's the new version of the shoe, right? And then the Hoka Carbon Rocket X are going to make their debuts on this channel because I want to see if, in fact, the 5mm offset shoe is the right way to go. And the reason I'm revisiting this offset of shoe is because I remember how the Vaporfly X% 2 was like a great daily trainer, a great racing shoe, but it wasn't the world's best thing that I ever ran in, but it was stable and it had like a nice streamlined fit, right? And then I started playing around with the Alphafly in like late 2021, early 2022, and I won 2 races in the Alphafly, which is a shoe that I believe has a 4 to 5mm offset. I think it's 4. I could be wrong about that. A 35mm forefoot and a 39 heel, or it's 34, 39. It's a 5mm offset, and like I had the fastest times of my life in that shoe. So could that theory prove correct that the lower the offset, the more punch I'm going to have while running? Absolutely. I also had probably a really good fitness in 2022, or in, was that 2021? I think it was 2021, and late 2020. I got my dates mixed up. But anyways, the point there is the fitness might have been better also, but the shoe definitely complemented at the time. So there's something to be said there, and there's something worth revisiting a 4 to 5 millimeter race day shoe, experimenting with it in the next quarter of my running schedule, which will be, you know, the United Corporate Challenge in 2 to 3 weeks. It's actually the JP Morgan Corporate Challenge. And then I have the Soldier Field 10 miler, and then I have the Chicago 13.1. And that's going to make up the early stage of my Q2 in running here, which is going to be big distance and things like that. So anyways, back to the Run Labs assessment. I guess other things we did was I did run on a treadmill where I was filmed in shoes, in my race day shoes. So I was doing it in the Adios Pro 3, in my daily shoe, which was the Puma DV8 Nitro 2. And then I also ran barefoot just to see, you know, my overall gait analysis. So that part is going to come in a follow-up visit with like another gait analysis doctor. So more to come. We'll have a follow-up on that. I also did an assessment on how far I was able to jump on one leg. We was also able to do an assessment on whether I could balance on one leg with my eyes closed for at least 30 seconds, which you should try this now. Like, try to stand on one leg and like try to do like a hamstring kind of style squat with your eyes closed. Like, that's gonna blow your mind how hard that was. But point there was like I managed to get through it, and it was all good. But I needed to like retry the first time because I was like, okay, my arms behind my back is not the way to do this, right? So we got those tests done. And what's going to happen in the next coming months, probably at Austin Run Labs 2, as this is part of our schedule, I got two things. I've got an injury prevention like massage that's going to come up, so anything that's sort of sore or any sort of beat down, like that's going to happen next. And then I'm also going to have a VO2 max test when the time is right. So as I get into like the trenches of Chicago Marathon training, I want to do a VO2 max test and see how I'm standing. So those are going to be some of the follow-up items that will also come along, and I will record the VO2 max test because that's something I've always wanted to do, but the second most important thing I ever wanted to do was like a gait analysis by professionals, right? Just to tell me what's working, what's not, should I change this, should I change that, are the shoes good, is my anatomy good, like what's the deal here after 8 years of running. A lot of good things I learned on the spot while I was out there. I never really thought about how the offset was not just like this one-dimensional thing, but this more like three-dimensional movement when it comes to picking your race day shoes. How the strength of your arches are more important to, you know, the offset and how you choose your shoes in that kind of direction. It would explain why the new Pegasus shoes, well, all of the Pegasus shoes for my understanding are always 10 millimeter offset, but it would better explain why the latest Pegasus shoes I've been training in after years of my feet and anatomy kind of forming its thing just don't feel comfortable. It would not explain why the Hoka Mach X, which is a 5 millimeter offset shoe, feels terrible to run in, almost equivalent to how the Pegasus does, even though one is like 10 millimeters and one is 5. So there's a lot of still unanswered questions there, but I'm going to trust the doctor's opinion for now, and like the biggest takeaway here is that I will be introducing the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus immediately into my lineup, and then the Hoka Carbon Rocket X will follow shortly. So we will be talking about those shoes as they kind of come along, but yeah, professional running doctors, just this is part one. We'll talk more about it later, so again, follow along if you want by just subscribing to this channel or just following along. Hit the like button. Hit the like button, you know what I mean? And yeah, it's going to be a good time. Lots of things to still learn, and we have a whole race schedule to kind of get across. So whatever knowledge I can get that can better all of this, make me faster, help you guys through, you know, myself getting help, that could be nice too. Like if you have similar anatomical features or like you've experienced certain things, like I'll bring that knowledge to you. But again, don't like treat yourself based on everything I kind of say, because we might have different anatomies. So that's like my other side disclaimer is like whatever's told for me, don't apply it to yourself until like you go to a doctor or a physio that you trust that can confirm that for you, right? So I will end the video here. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys in the next one.